What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Today we're looking at my 5 favorite running back sleepers. 3 are going to be more traditional late round sleepers. 2 after that are going to be more deep sleepers for those of you playing on Underdog or playing in deeper formats. So first up, we have Rico Dowdle, ECR right now. When I say ECR, that's like the average industry ranking. ECR running back 46, Underdog ADP 43, my running back ranking 41. Ezekiel Elliott, his only other competition right now, has 2,535 career touches, including the playoffs, and is coming off a season where he had 184 carries for 3.5 yards per carry. Since the year 2000, 23 other running backs have been that inefficient on at least 180 carries at 28 years old or older. Only 2 of those 28 saw their touches increase the following season. The Cowboys are pretty dumb, but they're not going to intentionally lose like New England did last season. Tony Pollard leaves behind 307 touches from last year, and with Zeke very likely to get less than 200 of those, Dowdle is set up for over 200 touches this season at that ADP of wide receiver, in that like 43 to 46 general range in drafts. I think that's extremely fair. Does it guarantee he's going to shatter that ADP? Absolutely not. But I think that's a really good price to get him among the running backs last season who had at least 200 touches. The bottom 5 performers were Singletary, Ezekiel Elliott, Algier Madison, and A.J. Dillon. They were the running backs 31, 32, 34, 38, and 40. So again, given all of these available touches, if Dowdle is able to get to 200 touches, he's going to outproduce this ADP, even if he's one of the bottom 5, running backs in terms of efficiency for like fantasy scoring. But realistically, it goes both ways, right? If you look at the actual efficiency, fantasy efficiency, it doesn't matter. The 5 I just listed were inefficient running backs, whether you're talking about either one of those 2. I have to think Dowdle, given, how good he was last season. Like, he was a pretty good running back last year. Looked better than Pollard at times. They kind of had to, given how much they were paying Tony Pollard. They kind of had to force feed him the ball. But there were a lot of games where, like, you had Pollard and you're like, I hope they don't catch on to giving Rico Dowdle too many touches here because he looks pretty good. So, realistically, I said 307 touches for Tony Pollard. That's gone from the team. Dowdle only needs 94 to hit 200, like 94 extra touches from last season. So we're not sitting here being like he needs to get all the workload that Pollard did. He needs to get less than a third of what Tony Pollard was given. So Zeke can still come in, get around 215 touches, which I don't think he's going to get, but he could still do that, and Dowdle would still have enough opportunity to outproduce his ADP. So out on Zeke this season, in on Dowdle, especially with them going right next to each other in drafts. Sleeper number 2 is MarShawn Lloyd, ECR running back 53, Underdog ADP running back 45, my running back 43. As we just went over, Dillon was on that list of one of the least efficient running backs, just given significant volume last season. In fact, Dillon has seen his yards per touch drop in every season of his career. Yards per carry bottomed out last season, an embarrassing 3.4. If you're getting less than Zeke last season, that's not very good. This season, they did bring in Josh Jacobs. That really kills the value of A.J. Dillon. But I think Lloyd is a different story based off of the things that they're saying and just what we know about Lloyd as a player. He's likely to operate kind of as like a discount Aaron Jones, mixing in on early downs, but being more featured in the receiving game. I think the upside obviously comes if anything happens to Jacobs. I think while Jacobs is fully healthy, it's discount Aaron Jones, right? It's not actual Aaron Jones production, because I'm pretty sure Jacobs can get more work than A.J. Dillon had last season. So I don't think Lloyd is someone, when Jacobs is healthy, that we're going out there and starting. But number 1, I just think that, like, I could be wrong, right? I could be wrong. They could, really, really like him, and he actually gets Aaron Jones-like production. But number 2, in this range of the draft, you're not going to find any like clear running back starters. Honestly, Dowdle might be the last one that's not even clear, right? Like, I think he's going to play over Zeke, but that's not any sort of guarantee. But in this range of the draft, it's not like you're looking at a bunch of players and being like, oh, well, he's the running back 1 on this team, he's on this team. Like, we're pretty late in the draft. And so you want to think about what is the outcome, if there's an injury, if something happens to Josh Jacobs, what would actually happen in this backfield? Would they operate in like a 3 or a 4 running back committee? Would they rotate in everyone's roles? I honestly think that MarShawn Lloyd, being a very explosive running back, being exceptional in the receiving game, I think at that point he would operate basically in the exact same role that Aaron Jones had, and it would be that role on what is going to be one of the better offenses in football. So if there's a world where he can get to like 10 to 12 touches each week, he's definitely going to pay off his ADP. And I just think that upside, especially when you have this upside in the receiving game, that's great for scoring in fantasy. Even in standard, I think people sometimes they think, oh, he's just talking about PPR. In any scoring format, receptions and targets are just like worth more than carries because players are just more efficient on those plays than they are carries. So in any format, you want players to be involved in the receiving game. That's the specialty of MarShawn Lloyd, plus being an explosive player on a great team. That makes someone you want late. Third running back sleeper is Bucky Irving, ECR running back 62, underdog ADP 55, my running back 51. People are going to hate on Irving because of his size. And to be fair, it's a concern, right? He's not Deuce Vaughn. He is 5'9", 192 pounds, gives him a 10th percentile BMI. He's not going to be someone that goes out there and gets 25 touches a game, but that's okay this late in the draft. It's okay. He's not going to get 25. He's not going to be a top 5 running back in the NFL. That is okay. He has a higher BMI than James Cook, than Devon Achane. Like, people have no problem taking Achane like the 2-3 turn. But what? They're scared to take Bucky Irving as running back 55, even though he's the exact same height and actually a pound heavier. So again, 25 touches, no, that's not going to happen. But this late in the draft, we don't need 25 touches. We still want upside, and I do think Bucky Irving has upside, but we know that he's not going to be, Derrick Henry, right? Of course not. But yeah, I mean, it's okay missing out on some of those like high volume touches when you're getting high value touches, right? A high percentage of his touches should come through the receiving game. And it just really comes down to role. The role will be there if either they choose to move on from Rachaad White in terms of like not getting rid of him, but in terms of being like, okay, you've had 3.7, 3.6 yards per carry in these first 2 seasons. If he goes out there with an improved offensive line and Bucky Irving playing well, and then all of a sudden he's still at like 3.6 yards per carry, they're going to be like, okay, like, we've given you a lot of opportunities. You had the second most touches in the NFL last season. Like, we've given you a lot of opportunities here. Can you do something? There's a chance that maybe Rachaad White is just not as good as we think, and that Bucky Irving, who's got the clear inside track at that number 2 spot, maybe he does overtake him as that like 1A to Rachaad White's 1B. I think that's probably the less likely outcome, but it's still absolutely a possibility. Other outcome is Rachaad White gets injured. They look at their team and they're like, well, we hate, Keyshawn Vaughn. Chase Edmonds is pretty much a scrub, and they really like Bucky Irving. Does it mean he's going to work out? No, but it means that they don't like the other two. And so if White ends up going down with an injury for a few weeks, you're going to have Bucky Irving going out there and getting a good amount of touches. And again, it's one that, a high amount of his touches, high percentage of those touches will come in the receiving game. That's great for fantasy. But yeah, I mean, like, Vaughn literally averaged 1.7 yards per touch last season. Like, Irving doesn't have to be that good to beat him out. They don't like him. Chase Edmonds, just a guy. I think it's pretty clear that Bucky Irving's going to be the running back 2 this season. Great pick at ADP and ECR. Moving on to the deeper sleepers. How about Braelon Allen? ECR running back 66, underdog ADP 64, my running back 61 and rising. I think there's room to kind of move him up. Just given, I've had a couple running backs. I've had 4 running backs I've been projecting for volume. And Izzy was one of them. Izzy, for a while, we had projected number 2. Problem is, terrible reports. I mean, this is a time of year where everyone has glowing reports, right? If you hear a bad report about a player right now, something is seriously wrong because, everyone is in peak shape. Everyone looks amazing. Everyone can, play all 3 positions and do everything, right? Like, everyone's great. Bad reports about Izzy. Kind of seems like Braelon Allen is already the 2, and if he's already the 2 right now, he's going to be the 2 this season. Great reports about him in the receiving game, which is amazing to hear because He was not that good of a pass catcher in college. We also know that obviously this team is going to feature its running back in the receiving game, right? Like Breece Hall is the one. Breece Hall is going to be featured. He's getting a ton of touches. Braelon Allen is not going to be fantasy viable while Breece Hall is healthy. But this late, you don't typically get into these handcuffs where, like, if Breece Hall went down, you would have Braelon Allen 6'1", 235 pounds, 95th percentile speed score, involved in the receiving game, and their backups aren't very good. I mean, he'd be featured, right? Like, he would be a featured running back in the same role as Breece Hall, probably a little yet less used in the receiving game, but he'd have similar amount of touches to Breece Hall on the Jets, which is going to likely be, as long as Rodgers can stay healthy, a good offense. I mean, he is basically Blake Corum in terms of like what you're actually getting in fantasy, but he goes 7 rounds later. That's an exceptional value. You should definitely be drafting him at his ADP. Then finally, we have Blake Watson, ECR 129, Underdog ADP 83rd. So no matter where you're playing, final round, you can have Blake Watson if you want him. My running back 71, so it's not like I have him as like a top 50 running back or something, but there's upside here. Now he's a smaller running back for sure. He's the same size as Bucky Irving, so for those of you who don't like small running backs, maybe you can pass, but he weighs slightly more than Jaleel McLaughlin, who they just gave 107 touches last season. So like you can get the touches as a small running back, especially these days. Anyways, Sean Payton loves this kid. He said they drafted him because of how special he was in the receiving game. Love to hear that. Then he comped him to Alvin Kamara in certain aspects. I don't want people to get, ahead of yourselves with that comp. Kamara is honestly, like, I don't want to say a bad comp to him, but like if you're doing like athletic comps, they're not even remotely similar. Kamara is way bigger than him. I think he was comping more like the natural pass catching abilities, right? When they drafted Kamara coming out of college, they were like, this kid is supernatural in the receiving game. If we can develop him on the ground, he's going to be an amazing running back. That worked out. With Watson, they're viewing it in a similar way. They're like, he's supernatural in the receiving game. We want to use him in that area, and whatever we get on the ground after that is a bonus. The big thing is that we have to worry about here is Blake Watson even going to make the team? He is an undrafted free agent. They don't have room. You're not going to have like 6 running backs, right? There's basically going to be 4 running backs on the team. I think the final depth chart is going to be Javonte Williams as that 1A, mixing in both on the ground and through the air. Audric Estime as their 1B, but that is only in an early down role, not being used really at all in the receiving game. And then Jaleel McLaughlin as that like change of pace back when they need it, passing down specialist mostly, and Blake Watson competing with Jaleel for that job. So I basically think that kicks out Samaje Perine. I don't think he'll be on the team. And that will actually kick out a lot of reception. I think Perine had like 50 receptions last season. He had a lot of touches in the receiving game. And so there will be opportunity for Blake Watson, for McLaughlin, whoever can win that battle. And again, let's keep expectations a little bit realistic here. Like, we are talking about a running back that did not get drafted, going outside the top 18 rounds of Underdog. Like, I'm not saying he's going to be, a featured running back in the NFL. And that's, on Underdog, that's a format with no kicker, no defense. So for those of you in like a 15-round draft where you're also taking a kicker and a defense, you only have 13 rounds of players, you're probably not taking him, right? But some of you playing deeper formats, 14, 16, 18-team leagues, many of you playing Underdog, I think he's well worth a pick in the final round on Underdog, just kind of mixing him in there. Because I don't know, I just feel like there's a chance that this is Sean Payton's guy. And given that Sean Payton backfields are highly productive in fantasy, like if you just look at like the running back points, you just like total up all the points that the running back scored on the backfield. He has had a top 6 backfield in points per game in 10 of his 12 seasons as a head coach. This is a backfield we want to get right. So if we can correctly identify who's going to score the most fantasy points, that's going to be really valuable, especially if we can find it in round 18 on Underdog. So if there's a chance that Blake Watson does have a strong role, we can get him that late. I just think it's a no-brainer to just sprinkle in. You don't take him in every draft, but nobody's drafting him, so take him occasionally if you need that final running back. You know he's going to be there in the final round. Also, definitely a name that could gain steam. Like if they cut Samaje Perine and he really does get hyped up, then being like, okay, I think he's gonna be the passing down back, and people know how valuable the running back role is on a Sean Payton offense, his ADP is absolutely going up. So if you want to get some shares before that happens, then make sure you're doing some drafts on Underdog right now. I'm having a ton of fun drafting over there. And if you sign up using promo code FFA and make a minimum $10 deposit, you can not only just do drafts right now, but you're going to get both my Underdog and my redraft rankings for free this season. That's an insane deal. And it doesn't even really cost you anything because you can just use that deposit, use the bonus they're going to give you on top of the deposit to join in on drafts, and then you get the rankings for free. Again, it's redraft and Underdog rankings. So if you're still here, you at least somewhat like the video, be sure to hit the like button and make sure the bell icon is clicked next to the subscribe button. That way you don't miss any of these free videos. I'll be back tomorrow to talk about some quarterbacks, but that, my friends, is the end of this one, and thanks for watching.